Thank you for joining me for this Easter weekend edition of God, Law, and Liberty. I thought Easter would be a good time for us to consider that the First Amendment's free exercise clause is actually rooted in the good news revealed in Jesus Christ. It's also a good time for Christians to reflect on the providential history of God and the way He constituted our nation such that an important and particular gospel precept would be penned into our written Constitution. The Free Exercise Clause, as I'm sure you know, forbids an interpretation of Congress's powers in a way that would prohibit the free exercise of religion. How it came to apply to the states, though, is for another day. But today, the clause might be used to keep a state's non-discrimination ordinance from being applied to a Christian foster agency that will not place children with homosexuals, even if the state calls their relationship a marriage. See Fulton versus City of Philadelphia, decided by the Supreme Court a couple of years ago. But on the ethical flip side, some legal scholars argue, and let me quote from their law review article, the federal Constitution's free exercise of religion clause can protect abortion rights by requiring states to allow abortion access for those with a sincerely held belief that their religion requires it. Now, how and whether the free exercise clause applies in those disparate situations can't really be determined until we understand its true meaning. But what most of us are not taught is that its true meaning is rooted in a particular gospel precept I'll get to in a moment. So what is the true meaning of the free exercise clause? Well, a summation of our founding fathers' attention for that clause is found in two observations made by U.S. Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story in his famed Commentaries on the Constitution of the United States. He wrote, quote, "The right of a society or government to interfere in matters of religion will hardly be contested by any persons who believe that piety, religion, and morality are intimately connected with the well-being of the state and indispensable to the administration of civil justice." However, he followed those words with these. This is a whole point wholly distinct from that of the right of private judgment in matters of religion and of the freedom of public worship according to the dictates of one's conscience. His latter observation suggests a distinction between the law ordering society, common law and civil law, and matters of conscience respecting the public worship of God. Madison and Jefferson provide further insight on this distinction and its importance. James Madison's initial version of the religion clause in the list of amendments presented to Congress for deliberation in connection with our Bill of Rights read as follows: "The civil right of none shall be abridged on account of religious belief or worship, nor shall any national religion be established, nor shall the full and equal rights of conscience be in any manner or on any pretext infringed." Notice the distinction between civil liberty, expressed in terms of civil rights, which necessarily entails civil duties, a matter I've spoken about before, and religious conscience and worship. The importance of conscience was made clear during the congressional debates over the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment portion we're familiar with by the adoption of this amendatory language, which was then considered and debated. Quote, "Congress shall make no law establishing religion, or to prevent the free exercise thereof, or to infringe the rights of conscience." The record is not clear how this language changed to its present form about a law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. But it should be clear that in the minds of our founding fathers there was a connection between religion and conscience. So when the distinction Madison made between the law of civil rights and civil duties, civil liberty, and conscience is taken into account, we can see how Thomas Jefferson's wall of separation letter to the Danbury Baptist has been misunderstood and misapplied. He wrote in that letter, quote, that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship. But he added that religion, understood as a matter of conscience between man and God, was, quote, separate from the, quote, legislative powers of government, which could, quote, reach actions only. That is, matters of civil liberty involving civil rights and duties. In other words, nothing in the Free Exercise Clause prevents the law from declaring the state shall not place children in a homosexual household. It's addressed to conduct and the civil rights and duties. Such a law does not interfere with the conscience of a homosexual as our founding fathers understood the Free Exercise Clause. Nothing's been dictated to the consciences of homosexuals relative to their beliefs about God and, if they think there is such a thing, how to come before him with a clean conscience in relation to worship, if they believe a clean conscience bears in their relationship to God. It doesn't require the civil government to grant permission for abortion. In sum, the Free Exercise Clause is neither a sword nor a shield relative to the regulation of civil rights and duties by law. In that light, we can see the importance of a Christian citizenry and its influence on the public and on the importance of Christian magistrates. Now let's take a look at the source for this constitutional protection of conscience in a person's relationship to and worship of God. The historic roots of the Free Exercise Clause are laid out well in L. John Van Til's excellent work called The Liberty of Conscience, the History of a Puritan Idea. It's a must-read for our generation, particularly for Christian lawyers. And he demonstrates in his book that the liberty of conscience was entailed in the Free Exercise Clause and can be traced back to William Perkins, a noted 16th century English theologian. For Perkins, the precept of conscience in relation to God is a critical aspect of the good news that is the gospel. This precept is stressed in the book of Hebrews and recurs in Paul's letter. A summation of it is found in John Owen's commentary on Hebrews 9:14, which reads as follows from the King James Version. How much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. John Owen, a 17th century English Puritan theologian, who offered advice to Oliver Cromwell during his protectorate, said, there is a solemn spiritual worship of God under the New Testament also, an ordinance for the due observance of it. Now, what is he referring there to? Of course, Hebrews is contrasting the solemn rituals and the means of worship in God under the Old Testament in the Mosaic ecclesiastical institutions and the church under the New Testament. So he's saying there's a solemn way to go about worshiping God under the revelation made in the New Testament in the person of Jesus Christ. So with that, he continues. This, in other words, this solemn spiritual worship of God, none have a right to approach unto God by, and none can do so in a due manner, unless their conscience be purged by the blood of Christ. And the whole of our relation unto God depends hereon. Even the best works of men, antecedent to the purging of their consciences by the blood of Christ, are but dead works. However men may please themselves in their works, perhaps think them to merit from them, yet from death they come, and unto death they tend. This precept, denominated religious liberty by English Puritans, succumbed to, quote, religious toleration under the renewed dominance of the Church of England following the demise of Oliver Cromwell's protectorate. But in America, religious liberty, not toleration, was to prevail. And that's why we have the Free Exercise Clause. As George Washington explained in a letter to a Hebrew congregation in Rhode Island, quote, all possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of. The wisdom of the Free Exercise Clause, in view of its modern application, can be debated. What cannot be debated is that there is no gospel good news without the declaration that we are offered a clean conscience before the triune God revealed in Jesus Christ, and the prospect of persevering in it unto an indescribable glory by faith in the Christ who dwells in us, who is our hope of that glory. Easter especially calls this gospel to mind, and may the Holy Spirit make its declaration efficacious on Easter Sunday.